We never got to actually learn how to sit and look at why we did what we did and the impact of it and the consequences, and to make a plan on how to not do it going forward. That's a skill of the front of our brain that if we're punished and shamed, that just doesn't develop. And so a lot of us are stuck in that power over self-punishing, self-terrorizing, self-criticizing, self-demeaning punishments, rewards. We're just all tangled up. And so it's hard for us to see any other way to raise our children when this is how we treat ourselves.
Hello, welcome to another conversation with Kiva and Rebecca. I'm Kiva Schuler. I am the founder here at the Giant Institute for Parenting, and Rebecca is, of course, our director of education. Rebecca has a new book coming out that we are going to be publishing through the Giant Institute on a topic that I know that many of you are here to hear about and learn about, because I think that our community, if there's a collective thread, we are the children who grew up that when we were kids, we saw that the way adults were treating us, were treating children in our homes, collectively, communally, was something that we were going to do away with, and that we were going to be the ones who break cycles of generational harm, emotional wounding, and even trauma in our lineage, for our lineage. I know I for sure made that promise to myself when I was a teenager, and also had the experience that just making a promise wasn't exactly enough. These are entrenched, patterned, maybe even genetic, we can talk about today, programmed behaviors that we're here to resolve in the name of our children and our children's children and their children's children's children. So we'll talk all about that today. And if you want to be notified when the book is available, make sure to join our email list. You can do that at giantinstituteforparenting.com/newsletter. We'll make sure and blast it out when it's been published. But Rebecca, thank you so much. I've read the book and it's beautiful. It gave me arm tingle chills. And so I think to start, maybe you could just give kind of a definition of what generational patterns are and why they're so difficult for us to break free of.
Sure. So we can look at generational patterns as inheritance, emotional inheritance, psychological inheritance, and physiological inheritance. So the way that our cellular structure creates and builds our nervous system, which is the foundation of our brain development, our emotional health, our ability to relate and be in healthy connection, our ability to know what is correct and good for us versus what is incorrect and not for us, not good for us, not right for us. And these are passed down cellularly, and as well as what we learn from infancy onward, we observe and we emulate. And so we essentially mirror our parents, and our earliest holding container, which is our family of origin, and we mimic until we get to a point, which is usually around 13 to 16, where we're individuating from our family of origin and looking inward and asking, is this what I want to keep believing? Is this how I want to keep experiencing emotionally? Is this how I want to keep behaving? And then we work to sift through that for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And what inspired me to write this book in the way that I did is that it has not been enough for me to be behaviorally modified, meaning it does not empower me. I am not inspired by fear learning or fear motivation, which is, don't do this to your kids. If you do, all of these terrible things will happen and they'll grow up and suffer tremendously. that did not motivate my nervous system, my brain, my heart. It woke me up, but it didn't give me a way forward. It paralyzed me with terror. And so, really looking at what it takes to become aware of patterns, form a relationship with these patterns, and then slowly begin to shift the focus, the energy, the effort gets to be done in the exact same way that we raise our children, which is kindness and connection and clear communication and clarity and core values and loving self-discipline when we mistake, because we can access introspection and compassion, and we just keep falling off the horse and getting back on. So that's a little bit,
Wow. Okay, so
yeah,
there was a lot in that. So I
as
was
I
trying to
tend
keep
to
notes
do.
and I love it. I was trying to keep notes in my brain. So let's talk about this idea of a cellular lineage of trauma, because I think for some, if I put myself 10 years ago and I heard that, that would sound rather woo-woo and pseudoscience-y. Can you talk
Okay,
about the science
sure.
of generationally inherited trauma?
Yeah, so epigenetics is a field of emerging research that's really exciting. Right before this call, I was actually studying with a neuroscientist. It's all about expanding your brain's capacity to feel joy and happiness. So we can look at our earliest attachments generationally. So the ways that our mother and father attach to their caregiver impacts their literal cellular expression. It impacts them at a DNA level, and that communicates upward to the quality of cellular expression in the development of our brain. So I'm going to keep it as simple as that. If you are inspired to research it, you'll read all of the scientific words that are really hard to pronounce. But if we could keep it that simple, and what I love about teaching this is that I anticipate skepticism, because that's what happens when the brain learns something new. It reflects it against everything you've ever known and then passes it as true or false. And I have also found that when people really sit with this beyond their skeptic mind, it touches something quite deep of it's we see it, we're living it. We're all living the pattern. Science or not, it's happening.
Yeah. Would you be willing to share some of the patterns that you've uncovered and danced with in
Oh, yes.
your own healing? I mean, you have a lineage
Yes.
yourself to bring to the conversation.
Huge. And I fall asleep contemplating this every night because it's so profound. My mother's mother essentially was sent to boarding school it as an indigenous person in the United States and separated from the culture of origin, and being taken from your family of origin, your culture, your language, your foods, your customs, your religion, and being and forced to assimilate. There's a huge rupture in belonging, being taken from your homelands. And all of that abuse and trauma was passed down into my mother's line, which was growing up in a very broken, dysfunctional, abusive, substance, domestic violent home, and being raised as a brown person amongst non-brown people, the belonging wound. And then me in my life, I've had to cut ties with my family of origin to really find my individuality. And there was a deep fear that belonging won't ever happen for me. So, as a mother, all of the ways that I hid from connection all of the ways that I would overwork and overcommit to, so I don't need to put myself in vulnerable positions to realize that I don't belong in that relationship either, or in that role either. And so all of the doorways, we talk about doorways a lot here at Jai, the doorways of awareness that I can see. I have the option to say, oh, I'm tired and I don't want to hang out with my kid right now, or "Ugh, I just don't feel like being a mom right now. I'm going to go do this thing." With my awareness now, I see that those choices are unconscious for me. And once I bring more awareness to it, suddenly I'm not tired anymore. Suddenly I don't feel stressed and overwhelmed by motherhood anymore, because I realized where that exhaustion or resentment or annoyance was coming from. And it was from a deep insecurity of belonging where I am right now, as I am right now. And it's a really powerful, subtle, profound pattern to eliminate my life of, and seeing my children be in their belonging and be in their community security, where they intrinsically believe they have value and they have contribution just by being present, nothing else. It's amazing.
It's fascinating because I think when we're kids, we see some things, right? And we see our family acting in ways, maybe yelling or being physically abusive or abusing substances. And those live on the surface, right? We say, I will not be that. And yet these patterns, what I hear in your story and what I've recognized in myself, is they live in the shadows. It's what we're not aware of. It's the
Mm-hmm.
pervasive ways that they are keeping us from the experience that we want to have, that we can't even begin to define.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how is what is invisible from our generational patterns of wounding and trauma and neglect, abandonment, all the things, how does that come into the light so that it can be seen and acknowledged?
Yeah, I really love working with our students and clients, and many of them don't remember their childhood, which is really common. And if you learned about the way that the brain stores memory and fear memories, it would make a lot of sense. But we see that our past patterns are present, and every moment of conflict is a doorway to shedding light on what is more insidious, shadowy. How do you say that word?
Insidious, you did it perfectly.
Yeah, yeah. Shadowy. So where our clients are wanting to hit their head into a wall about being a parent, you break that down, and we have a process here of opening the superficial doorway, and good luck, because you're going to be traveling potentially generations deep. And this is something that I prepare coaches to be able to do. And it's amazing what can come to the surface and be brought into awareness in the coach client relationship when the body feels and is shown at a nervous system level that there is space and capacity to hold this pattern, and the emotional attachments to it and the psychological attachments to it. Then it can begin to show us what is needed now to move forward in a different way.
I have this awareness that our children bring such an opportunity to heal from our past because they illuminate areas in our own development where we had shame or we suffered or we experienced stagnation. And that creates a trigger, right? We are against the thing that our child is exhibiting because we are against it in ourselves. And
Right.
this is why I'm so passionate about parenting as a pathway towards personal growth and transformation for parents, because our kids will show us exactly where
Yes.
these blind spots live.
Yes. So emotional maturity is the ability to release defense mechanisms of projection. So we're stepping out of the toddler-based way of coping with stress, which is blaming. You did this because you're a bad mommy. Like, oh, that's so sweet. That's where many of us live as grown-ups, and it's not our fault, and it's our opportunity to evolve and mature. And yeah, children are little flashlights coming in
Mm.
and it can be hard work. It can be so tough, which is why we come together and lean on each other. This is real stuff
Yeah,
for sure.
there's no easy button. I'm
Hmm.
glad because I mean, I'll just speak for myself. There's no other human beings on the planet that I would have worked so hard
Yeah, true.
a better person for a good. I mean, I did not perceive myself to be a good person before I had kids and wasn't in many ways. And gosh darn it, I was going to do whatever it took to become a good person for them. And I
Yeah.
don't think there's anyone else that I would have done that work because it is so incredibly vulnerable and challenging and all the things. And thank God.
Yeah, you can't break up with your toddler because
No,
they're not respecting your boundaries.
no.
But I was a social worker before coming here to Jai, and this is what parents would come to. They would be willing to release. And if anyone here listening has had this experience, this is what many parents are told is the final option is relinquishing custody of their children because they don't have any other support than eliminating contact. And we had a profound, we were in one of our Jai cohorts a couple weeks ago. We had a woman share her story and we were all in tears. It's on the floor. She has a 19-year-old son now, and when her son was 12, she raised him in what we call the power over paradigm, which is the expectation of immediate obedience. There's a lot of, what are you doing? Why would you do that? What is wrong with you? That's a classic energy that power over parents bring. And I talk about that in our book, where that doesn't make you a bad person. We get to illuminate why your system is wired to defaulting to that space. I don't believe that that's who you are or any parent is. That's a behavioral, emotional, physiological default. And that was this particular student's default. And so at 12, we also learn that a child raised in the power over paradigm, it is equivalent to brain damage. The amount of toxic stress and the amount of cortisol and adrenaline being pumped through their systems enlarges their limbic brain. It enlarges their fight or flight center. And so it just exacerbates the negative behaviors that we're seeing. It got so intense that a child psychiatrist told this mother, the only option here is to send your child to a inpatient facility and to relinquish custody. And this mother in that moment felt her very first HELLNO over my dead body, period. And she'd never heard of peaceful parenting. She's never read a gosh darn book about it. She's never read any scientific study. It was a primal no. And so what she did immediately, without any guidance, was to release all of that power over manipulative, abusive, defensive techniques and get down on her knee and say, I'm seeing that you're really stressed. Can I help? I'm here to help you. And she said within immediately the relief in her son's eyes of not being seen as an animal who needs to be sent away, she could just see like it, he just, yeah, I mean, you can't tell the story and not want to just like lose your mind. Everyone there was just like, we're just this is it. And she said she was terrified. She didn't know she was making the right decision. People around her were doubting her, all bring it, throw it. We've we know that this is the right thing. He's 19 now. She said it took a few years to really turn this bad boy around. Not the kid who's a bad boy, but like
Situation.
the thing. Yeah. And he's in college. She sent that psychiatrist a photo of him graduating high school. It's like, I won't do the middle finger,
I won't
but
do the gesture, but I got it.
and we hear things like that every day.
Yeah.
Like, stop terrorizing your child and watch what happens.
I have to believe though that sorry, now I'm going to be all weepy.
Okay.
Um, I have to believe that so many parents who are unconsciously terrorizing their children, I have so much compassion because
Oh,
I feel like
100%.
this is what we're told as children. I'm doing this for your own good. This hurts me more than it hurts you. It's like the generational gaslighting of bazillions of people. And so then we come to parenting and have this belief this is what parenting looks like. This is how I should be treated by this child with respect. What is it, do you think? I'm going to go out on a tangent here. Kids today aren't having it.
Mm,
And I'm really curious about
access
your
to community.
thoughts of what is happening that
Yeah.
children now feel like wildly empowered in such a good way to,
Yeah.
to stand in the face of that
Yeah.
and demand better of us.
I First thing that pops into my head, if I sat here and journaled, I bet a bunch of things would, but the first thing that comes to my mind is access to community. So social media
Right.
has a shadow side, it has a light side. They're plugging in to other people and not feeling alone in their experience and isolated in the home. And they're feeling what it feels like to be treated correctly, humanely. And they have a gauge of this feels terrible and awful. No. And they're able to compare it.
Mm.
That's a really lovely question that I'm going to probably obsess over for the
Yeah, I
next
think
48 hours.
that resonates. This information age that we live in does expose us. When we were kids, what we experienced in the home was,
Hmm.
sure, there was like 13 channels on the television, but those were also often depictions of very dysfunctional homes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that information, almost spilled my drink on my computer. um I think is a big part of it. I think that there is an increased emotional intelligence in the ecosystem,
Hmm.
which is good, but I'm blown away by teenagers in my world and the way that they can advocate for themselves and set boundaries and have
Yeah.
clear communication with each other, in ways that just I would have never in a million years.
I mean, I'm sitting here also in the flip side, like as we've talked about before, tween as young as 10 and teen suicide rates are the highest.
Yeah.
So it's a both and conversation where
Well, I
some
think
children are, mhm, go ahead.
sorry to interrupt. I think that this is the opportunity because I have to believe that that information, right? Like knowing that it could be different and being in a home where teenagers are met by their primary caregiver with derision, misunderstanding, shaming, demeaning, I can't help but believe that that's a big part of what we're seeing. And I know that you and I share this like that we want to get this work that we do in Jai and in so many parents' bodies and systems and integrated, because I do believe that saves lives.
100% saves lives.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. My goodness. I mean, I've got stories that I don't know if we have time for you to tell.
We'll continue the conversation.
Yeah.
I'll loop us back. And so, can you talk about kind of the process of, you spoke about, I'm going to use my words because I don't
Okay.
remember yours, kind of making friends, right? Making friends with these aspects of ourselves that we've kept in the shadows versus trying to like control them, tamp them down.
Yeah,
What does that look like? Can you walk me through it?
sure. Yeah. So this is something that I learned from you. So let me teach you what you taught me.
Love that.
I think I've come from the therapeutic background of slaying dragons, which is the behaviors in ourselves, the beliefs in ourselves, and the emotional dysregulation in ourselves are dragons that we need to slay and get rid of them. And we need to stand in our power and blah, 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 and to put it very eloquently. And then there is a different approach, which is just like how we would approach our children and their behaviors and their beliefs and their emotional dysregulation is with curiosity. That's our baseline here at JIVES. What would it take for me to access curiosity about why this is happening for me, where this is coming from in me? What would it take? What am I needing to shift this? And looking at this from a neurophysiological perspective, we're wanting to bring our safety and our regulation to the parts of our brain and nervous system that are unsafe and dysregulated. And so it's not trying to eliminate parts. It's not behavioral modification for parents. It's really going from the inside out of matching our nervous system to our behaviors, bringing congruency. Congruency is safety at a nervous system level.
Yeah, thank you. I can now hear why I taught you that. Um, Similarly to you, like there was just a point where I tried all the things and it was not working, and I was so exhausted at beating myself up and trying to be better that I figured out that I just better try to fall in love with what seemed unlovable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the more that I did that, it's compassion for self at the deepest level, because all of these things that we do that we don't like, we created them to protect ourselves. We were
Mhm.
super smart little kids who figured out how to navigate the world in a way that made us safe emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationally. And so, like, go little Kiva, and it's okay to grow up now. You
Yeah.
don't have to fight that fight anymore.
Yeah. And it's really hard to let go of defense mechanisms. I was just talking with my husband this morning. I'm like, I'm sad. I need to grieve. He said, what do you need to grieve? I'm like, all the unhealthy ways I've learned how to cope with life because I'm letting those things go and I'm learning to not use them and to not default to them. And I think about them as little blankies. Like when we were little, there are blankies, and it's like, I don't need that blankie anymore. Are you sure, Rebecca? You don't need that? I'm sure. Are you sure? I'm sure.
Yeah.
But you said earlier, all of the parents who are unconsciously terrorizing their children, a thought popped into my head, which was, we like, is it possible for us to treat others worse than the way that we treat ourselves?
Mm,
And so when we look at the way that parents treat their children, our work here at JAI is looking at the way you have internalized the power over paradigm into your own self. A lot of us don't have the brain mechanisms to self-reflect because it's been literally punished out of our brain. We never got to actually learn how to sit and look at why we did what we did and the impact of it and the consequences, and to make a plan on how to not do it going forward. That's a skill of the front of our brain that if we're punished and shamed, that just doesn't develop. And so a lot of us are stuck in that power over self punishing, self terrorizing, self criticizing, self demeaning, uh, punishments, rewards, we're just all tangled up. And so it's hard for us to see any other way to raise our children when this is how we treat ourselves. It's a confusing path
Yeah. Wow.
and a possible one, which is the most important part.
So to put a bow on that, it means step number one is to learn to be kind to ourselves.
Step number one.
Like what I hear you saying is we can't actually discover this well of empathy, compassion, kindness for our children until it authentically lives within our relationship to ourselves.
I would say it's a both and because I'm thinking about that client who told me the way that she shifted when her son was 12. She was terrified while shifting her parenting approach. She wasn't full of love and compassion to herself.
So maybe
So,
it's like a virtuous cycle.
yeah, it is. We're all starting in a spiral in a different place, like and going different directions, which is why also at Jai, we are here to support you to create your own parenting map because no one's map is going to be the same. So understand where you are and what you are needing moving forward, and then we're going to build it together every step.
Oh, Rebecca, you're a gem. We will have your book available soon. So if
My
you're watching
puppy.
this and you want to go deeper, you can jump on our newsletter list. We'll send a blast out when it's available. So go ahead and find that giantstituteforparenting.com/newsletter. Any final thoughts, parting words, my friend?
This is what I hear from many of our students, which is it's never too late to start.
Yeah, it's never too late to start. And I don't know that there's an end.
Oh yeah, that part.
Oh, good.
Um,
Now that we left you with that inspiring, motivating. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Please drop your comments and questions below, and we'll see you back next time. Bye for now.